Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to part 4 of my Superman cartoon reviews. We began this series by looking at the Fleischer Studio shorts, The New Adventures of Superman, and the Super Friends. Those episodes are all available, so be sure to check them out if you haven't already. Today though, we're going to look at the rare gem in Superman's animated history, the 1988 RubySpears series, Superman. The show only aired for one season on CBS, but in many ways it felt like the Christopher Reeve films extended into the animated genre. With comic legends like Jill Kane and Marv Wolfman involved, it was sure to be a fun ride. Not as cheesy as the Grey Super Friends, and not as dramatic as the legendary Bruce Timm series to come later, the RubySpears Superman cartoon struck a perfect balance of adventure, whimsy, and inspiration for all ages. Part of the series' charm came from its amazing cast and crew. Thanks to some networking by Jason from the Disney Afternoon Forever podcast, I had the honor of interviewing Ginny McSwain, the series' voice director and voice of Lois Lane herself. She had some amazing stories and insights, so let's hear them now. It's my honor to speak with the great Ginny McSwain. She's provided voices in many classics, and she's received 4 Emmys. She's also an accomplished voice director, casting director, and voice coach. So, Ginny McSwain, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
My pleasure. It's an honor. My voice career was pretty short in comparison to my directing animation and casting animation. This is my 40th year in the business, and I've really only a spattering of voiceover. It's mostly in the production of casting and directing animated voiceover or interactive talent.
I was just very excited when I saw the HannahBarbera on your resume. So.
Oh my God, that was my master's degree at HannahBarbera. Yeah.
It's classic.
I'm very grateful for HannahBarbera. I worship the ground it sits on because that was a lucky day when I walked through the doors of HannahBarbera.
Yeah, no, it was great stuff. So I appreciate your work there. Obviously, the primary concern of this podcast episode is the RubySpears Superman series. But before we go into that portrayal of Lois Lane, I'd like to ask you about your role as voice director. I know that is your the more extensive career. So for those listeners who might not understand exactly what goes into voice directing and what goes into creating an animated series, could you break down exactly what a voice director does for us?
Right. It's hard. First of all, it's all cyclical. I mean, this all started with creators directing, obviously, their own shows, their own animated shows from way back. It was not about a voice director. The voice directors came along later when somebody progressively, and I'm going to say Joe Barbera, wanted a voice director and not one of the producers directing his shows. And that's when they, from my past, when I was at HannahBarbera, I was in production for 4 years. Prior to that, in the art department, I worked for the head writer, blah, 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 and development, and I got to see a lot of the background of animation. But then this thing called a voice director happened when Joe Barbera brought in Gordon Hunt from the Mark Taper Forum here in California. And they had been friends from years ago, and he brought Gordon in, who is a wonderful casting director himself and director for live action and for theater. And Gordon came in, and Gordon and I started this department, and he was asked to just direct the shows there, the animated shows. And of course, that took it away from the creators or the producers that had been directing, and that's what kind of put voiceover directors on the map. And our job was to take the series when it was developed and either direct off a shooting script or a storyboard, and we would hire our people. I was the casting director, bring in our talent, cast them, and they would breathe life into the series. So that's kind of how that all came about. But then in the 21st century now, you have a lot of creators directing their own shows and games, and it's all cyclical. But I had a great run when it was the voiceover director that was needed out there to get a lot of these series done.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's a great big piece of history as well. So were you involved in the casting with the RubySpears Superman? Did you bring in some of these voice talents? Or?
Well, this is a great story, Michael. If even I will tell it on myself because it was a very unusual situation, and I had been freelancing, I think, at the time. I was on staff at HannahBarbera for 8 years. And then, and 4 of those were in production, like I said, learning the ropes, it was like my master's degree in a career. And then I, had been auditioning for shows. I'd see them auditioning at HannahBarbera. That's how I slid into some voiceover. But then, we started this recording department, like I said. Then I'd left Hanna-Barbera to go work for Geek Enterprises. Didn't stay very long, but the very savvy, smart Andy Hayward convinced me into freelancing for the first time in my life, which I didn't know what that meant. All I could think of was job security, but I did it. And the majority of my 40-year career has been freelancing. 36 years practically has been freelancing. I think my last staff job was Marvel Productions. But while I was freelancing, after Marvel was about a year and a half, and that was circa 85 to 80, the winter of 87. I was freelancing, and RubySpears called me and said, we're looking to do this Superman series, and we would like to audition you as a director. And I said, what does that mean? I've never auditioned to direct before. People have just hired me. Mm-hmm. So he said, yeah, here's what we're going to do. They had somebody on staff that was already their voice director, but they wanted to mix it up. So, and what was this, 13 half hours was it CBS or ABC? I can't remember. But they said, we've asked 5 of you to come in and quote unquote audition, and your audition will be, each of you will have an afternoon of auditions for the 5 lead characters of the series. But the hitch was, if I asked for so-and-so and so-and-so, they couldn't go in on anybody else's day, and vice versa. So it was first call, first serve to whoever you got. So if I wanted Michael Bell, I had to get Michael Bell fast. You know what I mean? Otherwise, And ironically, Michael Bell was asked to direct this show too. He was one of the contenders to voice direct. Oh wow! So I get my list all together, and I'm feeling pretty good about who I had coming in. It was like from like 2 to 6 the auditions, 15 minutes apart or 10 minutes apart for the talent. Michael Bell, who's a very, very good friend of mine over the years, calls me up and says, Ginny, on my day, I want you to read for Lois Lane. And I said, are you kidding me? I don't really do this anymore. People only really knew me as a voice director, casting director. And he said, no, I think you should come in and read. And so my ego said, wow. And of course, here's what I learned over the years. For my Lois Lanes, I had all these great texture voices that sounded like Margot Kidder, because we were pretty much basing it on the film that had just come out.
Yeah.
And so I had my aces in the hole for, what I thought was right for Lois. So the fact that he was asking Ginny McSwain from Chicago to do this, I thought I can say no and be a coward, or I can be an actress again and go in and make Lois Lane Ginny McSwain. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. So I went, I went kind of nervous. I went in on his day and read for Lois, and it wasn't a big piece of copy. It was just kind of a nice little monologue. And so when RubySpears called me, and this wonderful girl named Lynn Batchelor, who is now passed on, but turned out to be one of my really good friends, calls me up and she says, this is, she was, the talent department. She said, okay, we've got our list for, we'd like you, the voiceover director will be Ginny McSwain, Lois Lane will be Ginny McSwain. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And the good news was they picked most of the people for the cast from my list.
Oh, nice.
So that made me more than, happy on anything I just said. But I was like, oh my God, I'm going to direct the show, and I'm also I basically was directing myself as Lois too.
Yeah.
Because and so Lynn would sit in the booth. She was the assistant coordinator and casting person there. And she would, I'd say, is that okay? Can you play this back for me? And, that's what we did for that series. But I have to say, thank you, Michael, for asking me about, Superman, because everybody always, the Warner Brothers Superman that came later got all the attention, of course.
Yeah.
And, I was just doing my job, and, a scale 1 to 10, your listeners can rate it, but I worked really hard on that, and I was really, really proud of directing the series as well as being a part of the voice talent, which was probably the last series I did.
Oh, yeah.
And, as far as voicing things, because I was always behind the glass on the other side for all these years. But I was really proud of that, and I loved the cast, and I loved the experience of doing Superman.
Sure, yeah. The legacy of this show is quite strong with Superman fans.
Is that true? I'm so happy because I'm not into anything other than the immediate. I'm old. I'm not into technology or Facebook or any of the stuff, any of the links that go to all the fan bases here. So just to hear that, you've kind of made my day. This is like a a lovely tribute to a show that was a great experience for me. And I don't always say that. You know, we do shows sometimes when it's like, oh God, just get it over with. But the ones I love, the ones I really love, I'm so proud of. And it's funny, this was a great experience for me.
Cool, yeah. I run the Iconic Superman page on Facebook, and every time we post something from this show, people just go crazy and love it. So,
Wow.
I did want to ask, was this your first real experience with the Superman mythos, or did you have a little bit of familiarity with the character and the stories before this?
I will tell you this. I think any kid that grew up in the 50s was in love with Superman.
Yeah.
And from the old timey, was it Steve Reeves and all that? Who played Superman in the 50s?
George
Reeves?
Yeah.
George Reeves, right?
Yeah,
right? The old on camera.
Yeah.
And Superman was our hero. I mean, everybody wanted Superman, and even when the feature film came out, and I thought it was. I mean, he was just so sexy, and crime stopping and crime fighting. And I think that anybody that loves superheroes fell in love with Superman or Batman or whoever it was. And I don't know, it was an honor to pay tribute to the legacy,
Yeah, no, that's great. And you mentioned Margot Kidder. Obviously, the RubySpears series took a lot from the Christopher Reeve films. They did. Did you go from anybody else? Maybe some of the old 50s series or anything, or did you stick mainly with Kidder as your influence of shaping?
You know
those?
what? I went for the Kidder, and I had a sound-alike. Her Mary McDonald Lewis was my girl, and I thought she's going to so nail this. This is a perfect. It's Margot Kidder extraordinaire. She's a fabulous actress. And get a load of my cast though. My Lex Luthor was Michael Bell.
Mm-hmm.
Perry White was Stanley Ralph Ross. And, of course, Superman was the fabulous Bo Weaver.
Mm-hmm.
And Jimmy Olsen was one of my best friends, Mark L. Taylor. So I loved this cast. And, of course, then there was incidental casting for the guest leads or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved our cast so much. The fact that Lois Lane was not what I had in my head was interesting, but it honed me as an actress again to conform to a role. First of all, how could you not love Lois Lane? Here's a career gal. She's an opportunist. She's trying to get ahead. There's the great playfulness with Clark Kent by day and her great, love for Superman by night. And so that template was set by that movie. It got us all on board again for a more contemporary Superman,
Yeah.
Not only was it updated with whatever would happen in that decade, but also we could base it on something that was a little bit more hip and happening with the movie coming out, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to be a part of, and I'm sorry it wasn't longer. I'm sorry I didn't get a second season, but you know how these things go, and I don't remember how it did in the ratings. That's why I'm just so glad that you've given a spotlight to this series again.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's a dear favorite among many fans, and
you.
as well as your work. People really seem to respond to your Lois and voice direction in the series. So,
I kept her real. I mean, that's all you can do as an actress is tell the truth of a character. And listen, I went to college to be an actress. I went in the theater department. I was in plays, whatever it took to, perform. But coming out to California, as I did almost over 40 years ago, 1974, I guess, I didn't have the stomach to pound the pavement and do all that stuff. And I was a Midwest girl, and I knew I had to work for a living to get some, to pay my bills and all that. And the fact that I walked into HannahBarbera that blessed day. It was a December 75. I'm dating myself. December 75, I walked in there, and I was doing a play with my friend and fellow alumni, Annie Potts. And we were doing a play, and I happened to pass HannahBarbera on the freeway. And I was living in Studio City, and I was heading to the El Centro Theater or whatever it was called, and where we were doing Man in the Moon Marigolds, and I just happened to pull in. I pulled it like with my car, and this is when animation was cyclical. I mean, or rather seasonal. And it wasn't the 24/7 stuff that everybody's exposed to today. This was when you were dark in the winter, you sold those shows by spring, you produced those shows, and they aired for Saturday morning. That was the cycle. And so this is December, and I walk into Hanna-Barbera, and the halls are dark, literally. And there's a gal at the switchboard, I'm going to say switchboard, and a producer happened to be talking to her, and I said, do you have an application? And she said, and I literally went in there because I passed it on the freeway, and I went, oh, Flintstones, I remember that. And it's not like it was an animation buff, or like it now when people just want to get into animation. I didn't know. In college, if I were lying on my chenille bedspread, taking a nap, I would never have thought this would be my destiny.
Yeah.
And and there was a producer, Art Scott, the lovely Art Scott, was talking to this receptionist. And they looked up, and he heard me say, do you have an application? He said, do you have an art portfolio? And I lied, and I said yes, because I had taken a lot of art in college. It was my secondary love. And he said, come back tomorrow, and I'll introduce you to our art director, which was the famous Iwo Takamoto.
Oh, wow.
So I go home and pull everything off my refrigerator and that I had from college, stick it in a semi-professional portfolio, maybe. And I go back the next day as promised, and I met with Iwo Takamoto, and he said, well, I can't hire you because we're dark right now, but in March we start up again, and, if you're interested, I'll call you. And he did. And that's great. My entry into Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah.
So that was a blessed day to start this whole assembly line of shows that I did. But looking back, Michael, the biggest treat was that I was given this career by total surprise, and it's, as we say, it's been very, very good to me.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's such a great story. Thanks for that. And so, as you mentioned, we'll wrap this up with you do have a long and varied career, but both before and after the RubySpears Superman. So, for fans who want to get to know some more of your work, or maybe keep track of con appearances, I know you do have a website. So where's the best place for them to reach or follow you?
Well, I do have a website that like I said, I'm not a big techie girl that updates this all the time, but it's Ginny, Ginny, McSwain.com. And, it'll show my resume and things that I've worked on and all that. But, this is kind of a different time for me, because you can tell I've been around a long time. So, the good news is, I think for me, is that I work with people right now that I really, really like and that know my work and all that. This is not going to be the peak of my career. I've already done that. You know what I mean? This is, I privately coach people that are professionals already, and I love that sidebar of working with talent. I think the whole reason I do this, Michael, long story short, is because I love directing actors.
Yeah.
I will always have the actors back, being one myself, understanding the beast of acting. It will always be my passion. Even more than, it's not about animation to me. It's about directing these stories, directing these, it's like the radio dramas from the past. I love the feel of directing the actors and creating a story. So, it's not like I'm the big animation person that you'll see at a con, any of that stuff. It's not what I do. It's not what I represent for myself. So I have to just put that little disclaimer out there that, I won't be seen around at these things. I'm the person behind the scenes, and I work for the people that get me, and that's pretty much my career right now. So
sure, no,
I have to put a big plug out for. I'm doing a very sweet series called "If You Give a Mouse a Cookie," which you might have all had for your kids.
My daughter loves that book. Yes.
Right. Well, we're making with Amazon a really, really beautiful series.
Oh, wonderful.
A Christmas special will be out shortly, and I think at the end of the month, I heard. And it's a series that I'm working on, and then I still have a hand in some interactive games. But I'm not going to be out there selling myself. It's just What I do is spontaneous, and if you see me, if you hear me, great. That's perfect.
Sounds great. Well, your work has been a treasure for a lot of people, so it's a real
honor.
Thank
you.
Absolutely. No, it's just an honor to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time with us and chatting about this wonderful treasure in the past of Superman animation.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's an honor to have been asked, believe me. And thank you. You picked a wonderful memory for me.
That wraps up this episode of Cartoon Reviews. Join me next weekend when we'll continue our journey through Superman in animation with the Bruce Timm animated series and Justice League universe. You can check out the links to all of these DVDs and shows in the description, and don't forget to check out my own book, Heroic Inspirations. There'll be a link for that in my website as well in the description. Until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the superhero stories you love. Thanks for watching.